It's a little after midnight in Pompeii, and the street you're standing in is narrower than you expected. The stones underfoot are still warm. They have been holding the heat of the day since the sun went down, and they will give it back slowly all night, the way an oven does long after the fire has been raked out of it. Almost everything around you is asleep. The shutters on the wine shop are closed and barred. The fountain at the corner runs anyway because nobody built a way to turn it off, and the sound of the water falling into the basin is the loudest thing on the street. Then you notice the light. It's coming from a doorway 30 paces down, low and orange and unsteady, and it's spilling out across the paving stones in a shape that won't hold still. Somebody in there's awake. Somebody in there has been awake for hours already. This is a bakery. In the Roman world, the word for it's pistrinum, and it's the one building on this street that does its real work while the city sleeps. Bread has to be ready in the morning. Bread can't be made in the morning. Everything that sits between those two facts happens in the dark, and it happens here. We know that this bothered people. The poet Martial, writing in Rome rather than in Pompeii, lists in his epigrams the noises that keep him from sleeping in the city, and bakers are on his list. That's a small thing to have come down to us across 2,000 years, a man complaining that he can't get to sleep, but it tells you something that no excavation can. The night shift was audible. It was ordinary. It was close enough to bedroom windows to be rescented. Tonight you're going inside and you're going to stay until first light. Nothing dramatic is going to happen. That's rather the point. What goes on in here is repetitive and heavy and slow, and it will be repeated tomorrow, and it was repeated yesterday, and the repetition is the entire reason the city eats. Stand at the threshold for a moment before you go in. Notice how the heat changes as you get closer to the door. Outside, the warmth is coming up from the stones under your feet, left over from the afternoon. Inside, it's coming at you from the far wall, and it's a different kind of heat altogether. Dry, close. Much older than this evening. Step in. The first room is the mill room, and it's where the noise is coming from. There are stones in here that come up to the height of your chest. Each one is 2 pieces. The lower piece is a solid cone, fixed and immovable, set into the floor on a round stone base. The upper piece is shaped like an hourglass, hollow at both ends, and it sits down over the cone so that the 2 surfaces almost touch. Grain goes into the open top. It works its way down into the narrow gap. It comes out at the bottom around the base as flour. The stone is volcanic, dark gray, and full of small holes. That's deliberate. The smooth stone would polish itself and stop biting. This stone stays rough as it wears, so it keeps grinding rather than sliding, and it can be worked for years before it has to be replaced. At Pompeii alone, archaeologists have counted around 31 of these millstones, and in a working bakery you can find as many as 4 of them standing together in one room. They don't turn by themselves. Wooden beams are set into the waist of the upper stone, and something has to lean on those beams and walk in a circle all night to make the flour. The Latin name for this kind of mill is mola asinaria, the donkey mill, and that's half the answer. The other half is a person. The evidence for this isn't in Pompeii at all. It's on a tomb in Rome, the tomb of Marcus Virgilius Eurysaces, a baker who made enough money to be buried under a frieze showing his own trade, stage by stage. Read across it and you find the mill worked as a pair, an animal to provide the weight and a human being walking alongside to keep the animal moving, to tip more grain into the top and to clear the flour away from the bottom before it packed. So stand here for a while and listen properly, because there's more than one sound. There's the low grinding of stone against stone, which never changes pitch. There's the shuffle of hooves finding the same worn arc of floor. There are footsteps quite close behind them at exactly the same pace. And every so often there's a soft rush as another measure of grain goes into the top of the stone, and the note of the grinding drops for a moment, then climbs back. That cycle is the clock in this building. Everything else tonight waits on it. Look at the room itself now and not at the stones. In 2023, archaeologists working in Regio IX, Insula 10, opened a bakery of exactly this kind, and what they described has changed how this room reads. It's narrow. It has no view out. The only openings are small windows set high in the wall, close to the ceiling, and they're fitted with iron bars. Light gets in through them. Very little else does. Along one wall there's a long stone trough, the sort you fill for animals. And in the floor there are grooves. Here is the part that's worth slowing down for, because the obvious reading of those grooves is the wrong one. It's natural to assume they were worn into the stone by hooves year after year, the way a doorstep dips in the middle after enough feet have crossed it. That isn't what the excavators concluded. Their reading is that the grooves were cut on purpose. They were carved into the slabs to stop the animals slipping on the smooth paving, and to hold them to a circular path so that the walking stayed regular whether or not anyone was watching. That's a small technical detail, and it changes the whole character of the room, where it happens to place. Carving is a decision somebody made in advance about how the night was going to go. The bars on the windows belong to the same decision. So does the absence of anything to look at. There's no comfortable way to say what this room was. The people working these mills were enslaved, and they were housed with the animals they worked beside, and the room was built so that neither could easily leave it. The frieze on Ulysses' tomb shows the work. The room in Regio IX shows the conditions. Both are evidence, and the second one only came out of the ground very recently. You don't have to carry that forward with you all night. But it's here, and it's part of what this building is, and it would be dishonest to walk you through a warm room full of fresh bread without it. The grinding hasn't stopped while you have been standing here. It hasn't changed at all. It will go on like this for hours yet, and by the time the flour is finished, the sky outside those high barred windows will only just be starting to gray. Go through to the next room. It's warmer, and the sound falls away behind you. This room smells completely different, and the difference is sourness. Flour from the mill comes through and goes into a trough with water and salt and a piece of yesterday's dough, kept back deliberately, already alive. That saved piece is the leaven. It's the reason there's no waiting for wild yeast to arrive out of the air. It's why a bakery that runs every night can keep running every night, because each batch is the parent of the next one, and the chain has to be unbroken. Skip a night and you begin again from nothing. The dough is stiff. Roman bread isn't the soft open loaf you may be picturing. Wheat that has been ground between two lava stones isn't uniform, and the dough that comes out of it's dense and heavy and takes real strength to work. Then comes the shaping, and this is where you get to watch something you have almost certainly seen a photograph of without knowing what you were looking at. Each loaf is formed into a round. Before it goes anywhere near heat, a cord is passed around the outside of it and drawn tight, dividing the loaf into 8 even segments, like the spokes of a wheel pressed in from the rim. The center is pushed down into a shallow dimple. The name for this loaf is panis quadratus, and the scoring isn't decoration, it's portioning. It means the finished loaf breaks cleanly into pieces by hand in the street without a knife, and everybody gets the same share without anybody having to measure. Some loaves get one more thing, a stamp pressed into the top before baking, naming who made it. We know that because of one loaf in particular, and it didn't come from Pompeii. It came from Herculaneum along the same coast, and it's stamped with the name seller, described as a slave of Quintus Granius Verus. That's the whole inscription. A first name, an owner, and a loaf of bread. It survived because of what happened to both towns in 79, and it's now one of the very few objects anywhere that carries the name of the person who actually did the work rather than the person who owned the shop. The loaves go onto boards. The boards go by the wall. They will sit and swell for a while in the warmth coming off the far side of this room, and that warmth is the next thing you need to look at. The oven is domed, built of brick, and set into the far wall with a low arched mouth barely wider than a loaf. It has been burning for hours, and the fire is inside the chamber itself rather than underneath it. The wood goes in, it burns down, and the heat goes into the brick. Then before any bread arrives, the embers are raked out or pushed hard to one side, and the floor of the oven is swept. Nothing is cooking over a flame tonight. Every loaf that goes in will be baked by heat that's already stored in the walls, coming back out of them slowly, exactly the way those street stones outside are giving back the afternoon. This is why the timing can't slip. There's no dial. The oven is at its best in a particular window, and that window arrives when it arrives. Too early and the crust sets before the loaf has risen. Too late and the heat has gone, and you're left with pale, heavy bread and a night's work wasted. So watch the loading, because it's quick after all that slowness. The peel goes in flat and long, the loaf slides off, the next one goes beside it, and the mouth of the oven is covered. Then there's nothing to do but wait, and this is the only genuinely quiet stretch of the whole night. We know how the loading looked because at least one Pompeian oven was found still full. 81 loaves in a single oven put in and never taken out. They're still recognizable. When the eruption buried the town, the heat and the lack of oxygen didn't burn the bread away. They carbonized it, turning it to something closer to charcoal and stopping the decay that would normally have removed it within weeks. The scoring is visible. The 8 segments are visible. The dimple in the middle is visible. That's a strange thing to hold in your head while you stand in front of a working oven in the dark. Everything in this room is about the next few hours. About getting bread onto a counter by the time people are up. And the only reason you know any of the detail is that one morning, the bread never came out. Sit with the warmth for a while. There's nothing to do now but wait for it. The sky over the street isn't black anymore. It has gone a flat gray blue, and the lamps in here are still burning, although they have stopped being useful. The loaves come out. They're darker than they went in and lighter than they look, and they're stacked on the counter in rows, and for the first time all night, the building is doing something visible from outside. Behind you, the grinding has finally stopped. The stones are still. The beams have been unhitched. Somebody is sweeping flour from around the base of the mill, and somebody is filling the trough, and the animals are being fed before the people are. Out in the street, the shutters on the wine shop are coming off. The fountain is doing exactly what it was doing at midnight. The First person to arrive will pick up a loaf that's still slightly too warm to be comfortable and will break it into 8 pieces along the lines a cord left in it hours ago, in the dark, in a room they will never see, and they won't think about any of it, because why would they? That's the shape of the whole thing. The work is at night so the day can be normal. Nobody was ever meant to watch this part. Tomorrow the leaven gets fed again, the stones start turning again around midnight, and none of it's written down anywhere, because nobody writes down what happens every single night. We only have it at all because of an eruption, a floor that was carved rather than worn, and one loaf with a name pressed into the top of it. If you would like more nights built this slowly, subscribing is how the next one finds you. Every place in this series is a real place, and the sources sit under the video so you can read them yourself. Next time we leave the ancient world and get on the road at night, the mail coach between London and Bath, the guard who wasn't allowed to fall asleep, and the locked timepiece in the box beside him that decided whether the whole journey counted as late. Press now. The oven is going cold and the street is filling up, and none of that's yours to do.